ese tiempo mi hijo ha estado sometido a crueles presiones psicológicas para influir en su personalidad, profundamente debilitada por el trauma sufrido, y por si fuera, le han estado siendo exhibidos en desfiles, mítines y medios de comunicación, todo con el interés de sacar provecho político a la imagen de su tragedia.
It's been an agonizing experience to see my son submitted to cruel psychological pressures aimed at influencing his personality already weakened by the terrible trauma. Worse still, Elian has been paraded and exhibited in public rallies and by the media with a clear intent to obtain political advantage from his tragedy.
Laid out his ordeal, his struggle, and most of all his frustrations as he has attempted over the last 4 months to recover his 6-year-old son and return with him to Cuba.
I'm sitting in Havana and I'm watching you on TV.
That was a big struggle to get Juan Miguel to the United States. That was when he landed in the United States with his wife Nursey, whom you see there, and their very new baby. And he was really taking a big risk by coming to the States. We'd had a 9-hour meeting with Fidel and with other people in the Communist Party and with Cuban leaders to say, you know, we really need him in the States. If they want the boy back, he's got to come. And he said to me, he said, will you promise me that if I come, I will get my son back? And I had to say, I can't promise you that. It's not in my hands. It's in the hands of your government and our government. And we'll just have to see. But no one at that point thought it would go to the Supreme Court. I mean, just no one, that it would go all the way to the Supreme Court. It was incredible. When Justice O'Connor was here, I asked her, I said, would you tell me, how long did it take you to come up with your unanimous decision that Elian should be returned to Cuba? She said, well, I don't think it's fair. I don't think I'm entitled to tell you. Just let me tell you that we had to act as though it took longer than it did.
Interesting.
I mean, and she basically said this was, you know, this really was obvious that this child came from a strong family. I used to say, every time they asked me, I said, families raise children, governments don't. And this boy comes from a very strong, by that time I knew his grandmother, his great-grandmother, his aunts, his uncles, his father, and it was a very, very impressive family. And I was just in Cuba in November. He's 14 years old. And that little boy is 8 now, who you saw in her arms. Right. And I got to spend 3 hours with the family. It was great. It was really wonderful.
How do they refer to you? Aunt
Mama.
Joan? Mama?
Mama. Oh. Mama. Always Mama.
So, I mean, you really were that female figure during that whole process.
Yeah, it was a serious thing to be involved in because it was very, very controversial. There was parts of Miami that the FBI told me I should not go there. It was dangerous to go there, and I kind of poo-pooed that, and they took me aside and said, we're not kidding. Yeah. You need not go there. It's too dangerous. And the emotions ran so hot and so high. It was incredible.
Did you have threats on your life at all?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At the time, you weren't working for the council, and yet they designated you. Was that because of your prior relationships?
Well, when when his mother died and when he first came ashore, was November of, what would it have been? I came here in 2000, so it would have been 99. Right. And I was still General Secretary at that point. And so the Cuban Council of Churches, everybody asked, how'd you get into this? Well, we had a 45-year relationship with the Cuban Council of Churches. And the head of the Cuban Council of Churches called and said, there's this little boy lost off the coast of Florida, and now he's in the hands of his uncle, who refuses to take him back, and we wish you would get involved in this. And they said, you know, this will be simple. I mean, all we want you to do is to go see President Clinton and tell President Clinton if he could return the child to you, and then we wouldn't have to get all the Florida people involved because you bring him to us, and so it would be a church-to-church exchange. And I thought, yeah, not so likely. But I had no idea it would take as long. I mean, and I did go to see President Clinton, and he said, what a good idea. That is what we will do. We'll return him to you. They had by then investigated the family. This father was more investigated than any father in the world, and they found absolutely nothing that he'd ever done that was harmful or wrong or whatever. And so that was how it really all started. And then when I left, at the time I said, I'm about to leave. I've retired from the council. There's a new general secretary. And when the new general secretary came, he said, you know, I don't know anything about Cuba. I've never been there. Why don't you handle this for us? And which I see now was a nice little gift on his part. What I think people often don't understand is that I had a very long relationship to the churches. It didn't start with Elian. I could never have done it if I hadn't. This was, in November, it was my 37th trip to Cuba. So I'd gone to Cuba since the mid-1960s. And so I knew the people and I knew the churches, and that made all the difference.
What kind of faith base does Fidel have?
Fidel was raised a Catholic, Roman Catholic. He was raised in a Jesuit school. He was trained to be a priest. He's very, very articulate on Catholic theology and on Jesuit thinking. And I had a very interesting experience with him when the Pope was there. And I still remember seeing the Communist Party all in blue suits and red ties and not in their usual fatigues, all sitting very properly and listening to the Pope. And it was all very incongruous. And I said to Castro, I said, what did you think of the Pope's visit? And he said, well, he said, I think the Pope liked me. And I said, do you care? I mean, I was a little like, here is this, you know, atheist, giving up the Catholic faith. And he said, do I care? He said, well, he said, my mother was a Catholic. Yeah. I mean, like every Catholic boy would say is, well, of course I care, you know. And I was at the Vatican right after that, and I said to the press secretary, to the Pope, I said I was in this conversation, and Fidel Castro was asked about this, and he said he thought the Pope liked him, and he looked at me and he said, and he did. We had a very, very long conversation with the man who came, Greg Craig, who came to be the lawyer to be the one who supported Juan Miguel. And there was a 7-hour conversation, very testy, very, you know, Fidel kept saying, 42 years, we have never won a case in the United States. And then he would say to me, what is wrong with you? What makes you think that we're going to win this case? And I finally said to him, you know, I can just tell you that if Juan Miguel does not come to the United States and he does not have a lawyer, then you will not get this boy back. And then Greg Craig, the lawyer, turned to him and said, and I want you to know, El Presidente, that if Juan Miguel wants to defect and stay in the United States, I will represent him. And I thought, oh, well, this is the end of this. But Castro looked at him and said, as I would expect you to do. He is your client. I am not.
That's part of his law background also.
It's part of his law background. And when we finished and all the agreements were made that it would happen that way, he took me aside, and that's the only time he's ever called me Joan. And he said, he spoke in English. His English is perfect, but he usually won't speak English. And he said, Magnifico. He said, you were a midwife, and that's what we needed. Terrific. That's what we needed, a midwife. And I thought it was interesting, he used the feminine imagery of, you were a midwife. Part of the Elian story was that finally 85% of the American people didn't buy the propaganda. They just said he should go home to his family. Right.